welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie, I'm a mixed media artist, and in today's video I'm going to be talking through some of my favourite art supplies from 2023. But before we get into the video, because I am posting this on New Year's Eve, I do want to just reflect on 2023 and say a huge thank you for your support. This YouTube channel has grown a lot in 2023 and I'm really grateful. It's so nice to see and read your wonderful comments and see the art that you've created inspired by some of the videos I share. It really is appreciated, so thank you so much for your support this year, whether you've liked or commented or subscribed to my channel. It does mean a lot. I have big plans for 2024, so I'd love to have you come along for the ride. So I don't do this very often, but if you haven't subscribed yet, please do click that button and come along for the journey. So with that being said, this video is going to be all about my favourite art supplies from 2023. This is a new video that I haven't done before, so the first one I've ever done on my channel, which means I don't have any to refer back to, but I have seen other artists do this and I thought it would be really fun for me to join in. I'm not going to be talking about all of my art supplies in this video that I've used this year. I don't want to push over consumerism, but I do want to highlight some of my favourites. So some of these are going to be new things that I've tried in 2023, as well as some old favourites, but I'm not going to be sharing like all of my gouache, all of my pencils, because I just feel like that would be a little bit too much. As a mixed media artist, I do use a lot of supplies, and I tend to jump around, so it was a little bit hard for me to highlight specific favourites, but there has definitely been some highlights. So those are the ones I'm going to be talking about today, and I will link them all down in the description box if you're interested. So we're going to start with an art supply that I feel like has defined my 2023. I feel like it was the year of acrylic markers. So I keep all of mine in this little pouch and I want to talk about some specific brands. So first up I'm starting with these Posca acrylic markers. These are where it kind of started for me. I did use both of these in 2022, so this brand isn't new to me, but I definitely feel like I found my comfort zone with these. I used both of these in my finishing my sketchbook video a couple of weeks ago, and if you watched my sketchbook tour from last week, which I will link up in the cards, you'll know the beige Posca in particular has been a go-to. I started using this as like a base layer, so particularly for my panels I find it as a really nice warmth and it just gives me something to work on top of. I find that most mediums go over really nicely, so this has definitely been a must for me in 2023, and this one is the Slate Grey, which has also come into a lot of use recently with my winter colour palettes. So those were like where it started with acrylic markers for me, but then I moved on to mixing my own and discovering the Montana brand. So I've just picked a few out of my pouch there. I've got more than this, but these have been mixed myself, so these aren't shades that you can buy from Montana. I generally don't use them as they come because they're a little bit too bright for me. Generally Montana is used for graffiti art and they do spray paints and things like that. But I've really loved using these and I go to these the most, I think, because obviously they're my favourite colours. Because I've mixed them myself, it means that I know it will work with my usual colour palettes and with my landscapes and things like that. I find that some of them can be a little bit liquidy and runny simply because of the amount of white that I've put in there, but they have a really lovely coverage. I find them really opaque and they don't dry shiny or glossy at all. They're very matte, so perfect for mixed media. You can see that I'm swatching some of these on screen and you'll see the little refills that I use to mix my own colours. For me, acrylic markers have been a game changer because I love that you can just grab them and go. I don't have to faff about with paintbrushes and palettes. I can just use these straight into my sketchbook and it really breaks down the barriers. There's no stopping me from creating. I don't have to worry about getting everything out. I can just grab these and create in my sketchbook, which as an impatient artist is really helpful for me, and it just means I can create really quickly because I do work quite fast. They dry really quickly, obviously because it's a sort of thinner layer going on compared to if I was using acrylic paint with a brush. So that's a really big plus for me because I don't like waiting for things to dry. Obviously it is a wet medium, so there's still that little bit of drying time, but certainly not as much as the actual acrylic paint. So Montana have definitely been a big brand for me with acrylic markers, but I also want to mention Liquitex and Molotow. For me, the Molotow is probably better than the Liquitex because these can be a little bit inconsistent and a little bit runny, and they also can dry glossy. Whereas I find the Molotows are similar to the Montanas, and I don't have many shades of these, so I would like to build up my collection in the new year. But I have done a video all about acrylic markers and comparing the brands on my channel, so again I'll link that up in the cards and down in the description if you're interested. So we're going to stick with paint, and next up I'm going to be talking about this Kuretake Gansai Tambi Art Nouveau watercolour set. So it is a bit of a mouthful, but this is a watercolour set that I got for my birthday, so I started using this in the summer, and I've absolutely loved using this medium. One of the things that drew me to this set is the colours. So this colour palette, like I said, is the Art Nouveau set, and I just thought that it goes together really nicely. I love all of these colours, and it means I can just get this out and start using all of them together. Kuretake do have a wide range of sets, so lots of different colours and individual ones as well. So the only thing that I feel like is missing from here is more of a sky blue and a white. So I've been thinking of swapping out some of these that I don't use all the time for those two, and then I feel like that would be the perfect palette for me. Now, I am not a watercolour person, I tend to use gouache, but this has been like the perfect in-between for me. They're very opaque, so I find that they're in the middle of watercolour and gouache. I really love the consistency. I feel like they're a lot thicker than watercolour, so for me it felt like there was less of a learning curve because I'm so used to gouache to then using these watercolours. They dry really matte, I find that they layer really nicely, and I can put loads of mixed media on top, so my Neocolors and my pencils. So this has been a definite for me this year, and I've really enjoyed using this medium. It means I can play a little bit more with the blending effects, so I don't do that so much with gouache because it tends to go down a little bit thicker, whereas this has really opened up some more techniques because I'm using more water. So linked with that watercolour set, I also want to talk about the sketchbook I've been using it in. Now, if you've been on my channel before, you'll know that Royal Talon sketchbooks are my go-to. They are really affordable, they have a huge amount of pages in them, so 80 sheets, 140 GSM, and I'm just not afraid to create in here and fill my pages, which sometimes I do find with more expensive sketchbooks. So obviously the Royal Talon sketchbooks are a favourite for 2023 and will be going forward, but I can't use the Kuretake Gansai Tambi set in those sketchbooks. And that's because it needs more water, and I find the Royal Talons doesn't hold it very well. They don't hold very wet mediums, the paper tends to buckle a lot more, so for me I've been reaching for a different one. And that is the Strathmore Mixed Media Sketchbook. I picked this up in New York last December, and this has been perfect for me when I have been exploring some more wetter mediums. I have used other things in here like gouache and Tombows and a lot of different mediums because it has really white paper, so compared to the Royal Talon's ivory paper, this is a lot whiter, and I find that it really makes my colours nice and vibrant and really shows off the pigments a bit better. It's also obviously where I have been using that Kuretake set, so it means I can play with the blending techniques and really use the wetter medium. Obviously, if I want to be quick, I'll reach for my acrylic markers, but when I want to play a little bit more and I'm okay with waiting for it to dry, this is the sketchbook I reach for because I find it's got a really nice paper which can hold a lot. It does have a slight tooth to it, so it's not as smooth as the Royal Talons. It's certainly not cold pressed, it's not quite as rough as that. I do have a video where I compare the sketchbooks as well as an Etcher sketchbook on my channel, so if you want a more deep dive into these sketchbooks, I will link that in the cards and down below as well. Next up, I want to talk about Derwent Inktense. So I started my collection with a small set of pencils that I received from my dad years and years ago, and it was only last year that I actually started to realise their capabilities. I feel like as a mixed media artist I've become a lot more adventurous with how I use my mediums, so I was starting to dip them into water and soften the lead, and where I've been more interested in texture, they've been the perfect medium for me. So I did work with Derwent in the summer, and they kindly gifted me some of their Inktense range, and it meant that I could use some of these Inktense blocks which I hadn't used before. I wasn't really sure how to incorporate them into my artwork, but when I started to just dive in and create and just play with them, it really opened up a huge amount of techniques for me. I have really enjoyed using both the XL blocks and the smaller ones, so again I'll be sharing on screen the swatches and the sizes of these. But they really make me playful. I really have enjoyed experimenting with these. I feel a lot more freer when I'm creating with these than when I am with a paintbrush, and so I feel like it's made me enjoy my sketchbook more when I am using them. I find I use these more in my larger A4 sketchbook because I can be a lot freer with my movement compared to using them smaller. But I've also been enjoying using the Derwent Inktense pencils for line work in some of my smaller pieces. So these have been really fun for me, and if you have been wondering about how you can use these, because I know they're very different to a lot of mediums, I have done a whole video about how to use them, so if I can link any more videos in the cards, it will be up there, but otherwise do check the description box to find that video. Next up, I want to talk about some watercolour brush pens. Now, these are a totally new brand to me that I've discovered this year. Obviously, I've seen a couple of artists use them, but I decided to pick up a couple in a local art shop to me to try them out, and I've been really impressed with them. So I picked up 2 greens, and then I picked this one up in Vienna, but these have been my favourite out of the 3 I have, and I know that's not many, and I would like to buy a couple more shades in 2024, but they're definitely a medium I want to explore more of, and particularly this green has been a favourite over the last few months. So this green is the Earth Green 172. These are the Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer watercolour markers. So quite a long name, but I've been enjoying how juicy these are. I'd say actually they're even juicier than the Eco lines, which I would say is the most comparable brush pen to these. Tombow ABT dual markers, and I'd like to use these in more applications when I have a few more colours. They are watercolour, which means you can get a lot of pigment from them and apply water on top of them onto your page, so definitely something I'm going to experiment with going forward. But this is my favourite shade of green, and so to find it in a pen is perfect. And then the other one I have is Sanguine 188. I bought this in Vienna to try and tackle the rooftops because I didn't have the right colour with me, and it's a really lovely warm brown colour. So I am looking forward to expanding the range in these, but definitely a favourite of mine that I know I want to buy more of. Okay, so next up are coloured pencils. Luminance are still my favourite. I did obviously buy that big set of the Faber-Castell Polychromos, and there's a couple of shades in there that I can't find elsewhere and I know are going to get a lot of use. But for me, Caran Luminance pencils are still my favourite pencils, and so I want to just mention 3 shades that I've been using a lot this year. I have been growing my collection, and I was lucky to get a set of 20 for my birthday as well. So you can see my Luminance are in their little owl mug over there. But these 3 have been ones I've enjoyed using. 2 of them are new for this year, and one of them has just been a firm favourite all year long. So first up we've got the Anthraquinoid Pink 571. This pink is such a lovely shade. It's a mid-tone and it's kind of hard to photograph sometimes. I find that it is tricky to capture, but I really love how warm and rosy this shade is. It's definitely a warm toned pink, and I just find it's really helpful for adding on final touches. So I use this for some line work and to add on bits on the horizon, and even for adding journaling to my pages. Doing it in this pink adds a lot of fun to the page, so I've definitely enjoyed using that shade this year. And similarly, the Ultramarine 140 was Emma Carlisle who got me onto this shade, and again it's great for pops of colour on your spreads, adding in coloured line work. I've also used this for life drawing, and it's a really lovely bright blue. Such a nice shade. Again, I would say it's a mid-tone and one I've been reaching for a lot. And last up is the Dark Indigo 639. I have bought so many of these pencils because I go through them so quickly, but this is my perfect dark shade. I use it for line work in place of black, and it basically can be used as a dark tone for most colours. I can use this in place of a dark green, obviously it's a dark blue, but I find I reach for this the most out of all my Luminance pencils. So if you're looking for a dark shade and haven't tried the Dark Indigo, I definitely recommend it. And lastly, I want to talk about Neocolors. So I've been using them a little bit less this year. I mostly use them to finish off my pieces, whereas I know in 2022 I was using them for full pieces and creating artwork just using Neocolors. But this year I've been using less of the neutral shades, so I know I was using a lot of the olive and dark olive. Whereas this year I've been using the more brighter shades to finish off my pieces. So some of my favourites are the lemon yellow and the salmon pink, which you'll see does pop up in a lot of my landscapes and urban sketching work, just to add that little pop of colour, as well as the sky blue. I've just bought a new one, so this one is still nice and sharp, but I absolutely love this colour, and I've picked this one out as my favourite on top of the other 2, just because I found this to be the most versatile colour. I like using this for line work for buildings as well as pops of colour in landscapes, but this colour is just one of my favourites, fast becoming my favourite supply out of all of the supplies I own, just because it is so versatile and such a nice shade to add to so many different subjects. And then the other one, which is, I think I discovered it in 2023, is the light cobalt blue. You can see this is getting a lot of use again because of my recent wintry colour palettes, but I use this all the time for skies in the summer and just adding it to a lot of my landscapes. Paired with the sky blue, I think it works really nicely, but it's just my perfect shade for a sky, and I was looking for a Neocolor this shade for ages before I found that they had the perfect one. So I did ramble on a lot more than I expected, but I hope that was helpful. I've just covered a few supplies that I've enjoyed working with this year, and hopefully it's given you some ideas as well if you're looking for specific shades of these mediums to build your own collection. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your support this year. I hope you have a wonderful 2024. Hopefully you'll stick around to see where we go next, but a huge thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, I will see you next Sunday with a new YouTube video, so have a happy new year and I'll see you then. See you later!